Here we have a 1938 Emerson model BJ210 5-tube AM 2-band radio. Now this radio, first thing you'll notice off the bat, it's missing the top. And I bought it that way today at a local antique store. I give $6 for this, and it was sitting in their musty basement. And I gotta say, it's intact, it's complete. But boy, is it ever a mess. The band's received as AM. It'll receive all the way from 55 up to 1600 on the AM band. And it'll also receive a shortwave band, which it'll receive a police band, an amateur radio band, and I think it's even got a marine band. It's all kind of mixed together on the dial here. And the shortwave band runs from 1.6 up to 4.0. And when I first bought this radio and brought it home, I'm thinking in the truck on the ride home, I couldn't find a model name on it, a maker's name on it. And I'm looking at a lot of radios online recently, just kind of getting a feel for some of the stuff that's out there, the old stuff. You know, I enjoy things like this, collecting them. And I thought in the back of my head, and I only thought for a second, it looks like an Emerson. Well, by God, when I got home, just barely, you can see it on this video right here, it says, let me get a little closer here, it says Emerson Radio and Television. You probably can't see that on the video, it's probably real grainy. And then down here at the bottom of this very yellow dial, it says Emerson Television and Radio Corporation, New York, USA. And this dial bezel, this plastic cover, does have a hole in it, here and here, so I'll have to find a way to replace that. But largely, all in all, besides a few nicks and scratches and the big thing with the top missing, the cabinet's complete. It's not missing any veneer off the sides. The bottom looks good. That's a scuff you see. Let's turn this pup around and take a look at it. Like I said, it is complete. It's missing the back too, but the top's the most major striking issue. As you can see, everything's there. We have the old chewed up original power cord, which is not bare. There's a few frayed spots in it, but all in all, it ain't in real bad shape. And there's no way in Hades that this will be plugged in. Somebody's done some patching. This is actually the antenna. And being this is a hot chassis radio, if you did power this up, it would be a dumb idea because you have bare wire right on chassis, because that grommet is hard as a rock and it's missing a piece out of it. And I believe, let's turn this around one more time, that what we have here is our on volume. We have our tuning, which despite the condition of the radio, the dial cord is intact, and it does work. And on the back, what I believe this other switch to be is your band switch, right here. AM to shortwave. An odd spot for a band switch, I have to admit. Now the tube complement in this radio is a little odd. I've never seen anything like it, but it's probably because of the age of the radio. I'm not really all that familiar with it. But of the 5 tubes that this thing uses in its lineup, it uses a 6A7, which is a pentagrid oscillator modulator. It uses a 6D6, which is your first IF amplifier, a 6Q7G, which is a diode detector, AF amplifier, AVC, a 25L6G, which is a beam power output, which I don't know if that's an audio output maybe, I don't know, a 25Z5 dual half-wave rectifier tube. And this was the odd one I'd never seen. It's probably for the age of the radio, and I've not been around them a lot. And it uses a variation of one of these tubes, but it could have a B or a BG with it. It's a L49B or an L49BG, which is a ballast tube. And what that ballast tube does, from my reading on Nostalgia Air through their literature I printed off, is that it drops the voltage coming in from the line by 49 volts that way it passes that voltage on to the rest of the tubes, but it drops at 49 volts. Very odd, and I read that 2 or 3 times to make sure that I had a full understanding of how that worked. And if anybody has any more information about that, I'd love to find out why they did that or what the idea was behind it. I've never seen that before. And another thing that's in here, this has, you can see the label right down there, a Utah speaker in it. And it has the original Utah label on it. So there's a look at that. And I'll pull the chassis at a later date, probably later tonight or tomorrow, and we'll patch all these videos together, and once I have it up and all patched together, I'll put it up as one. But that's it for right now. Right next to that Emerson radio I was showing you, whatever, sitting next to the Westinghouse, was this bag of tubes for $6 too. I didn't notice them at first, and I come back down there, I was looking around the last time, yeah, what's this? So I brought them home. Now it's marked, what do we have here? We have radio or TV tubes, $6. Let's open them up and take a look at them. See exactly what we got here. I've got a few tubes now, but not too many. Let's see what we got here. Here's an RCA. This is a 6BQ6G TB with a backslash of a 6CU6. Interesting. Here we have another RCA branded tube. This is a 6SN GTB. Here's a Sylvania with a grid cap on it. This is a 1G3GT. An oldie. Here's a Tungsol. See what the number is on it. There's a Tungsol 6W4. No. Big bad boy. Let's move some of these out of the way, shall we? A big bad boy. That's a General Electric electronic tube. And that is a 5U4GB. That one had a grid cap on it too. It's missing. Maybe it's in the bottom of the bag. Hopefully. Well, there's a tube shield with a cap. Tube shield with a tube jammed inside of it. That's a Bendix. I can't make out any numbers on it. Paint's about wore off of it. There's a RCA. That's a 6AU6A. It's a mouthful. Another RCA, that's a 6AL5. Another Bendix branded tube, but I can't make out any numbers on it. Another RCA, the numbers wore off the side. Another RCA, I think. No, I'm sorry, it's Channel Master. First one of them I've ever seen. It's a 6SN7 GTR. Just amazes me all the different tube manufacturers there were. Isn't there a shield with a tube jammed in it? There's another one. One must have harvested some tubes out of something and didn't pull them out of the shields. Another little channel master. It's an RCA 6J6. RCA 6W6 GT. Not sure what that is. Some of these are so worn you can't even make them out no more. Like that one, you can see the box where the numbers should be, but you can't see the numbers in them. No grid cap for that one. That's a bummer. Yeah, we'll play around with them and see if we can get them out of there and see what they are. The ones I was able to pull out of tube shields, we found an RCA 6BC5, another Bendix. This one's a 6BC6. Another 6BC6 Bendix. And an RCA 686. So, don't know what they're worth, but they scored quite a few number of tubes today. I don't know if they're any good or not, but quite a bit in that little bag. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. About 18 tubes there. This morning I took some of these tubes and cleaned them up, and it's amazing how nice these look. And I guess it's just because I'm an electronics nerd. How something so simple can do so much in a circuit, you know what I mean? What I ended up with total, oh, what do we got here? We had whatever a 6AU6 was for, probably an All-American 5 radio, I'm guessing. There's 5 of them, 2 6CB6s, a 6BC5, 2 6AU6As, a 6J6, 1 6AL5, 2 that are 6SN7 GTBs, 1 is a 6W6 GT, 1 5U4 GB, 1 5BQ6 BTB, 1 6W4 GT, 1 1G3 GT, and a 6L6 GT. I looked a lot of these up on a few different websites and took a general census over all of them. And I know it's based a lot on the performance of the tube, how well it does. I mean, all of these here could be junk. That might be why they were where they were for $6 in the bag. And I understand that the functionality affects the price greatly. But just a general overall of what these tubes are going for. The 6AU6s are going for $5 a pop roughly. And the audio tubes that are the 6SN7 GTBs, the general census on an average says they're going for around $25. The 6BQ6 GTBs, 15 a piece. And then just for the hell of it, I went through the radio that I bought yesterday, that Emerson BJ210, and looked down a line of what all those tubes were worth. And you know, roughly I got, if everything's good, there's 20, 30, 30, 42, 45, 46. There's about $56 in tubes in that radio if they're good, and that would be to replace them. So hopefully that won't happen. The most expensive one, the most expensive few being a 6A7, a 6Q7G, a 25L6G, and this ballast tube that it uses for the 49 volt drop across the tubes, which is the L49BBG. And those are pretty expensive to find. But I cleaned them all up, labeled the ones that the paint was wore off of, which I basically had to wipe it, check it, and put it underneath of my big magnifier here, and wipe a little bit more and check it, and I found numbers on all of them. The only one I didn't have a number for was this one. I had to cross-reference it online as to what the LA stood for on the base. It ended up being a 6L6 GT from 1958, I think is what it said it was. The rest of them had enough of a mark I could get a good read on them. And I cleaned the tube shields up too. So I'll take them all and put them away and keep them safe for another day. Now let's get back to that radio, shall we? Now, before we disassemble this chassis out of this case, or what's left of this case, I want to touch upon a few things that I've learned over the last year or so of getting into and starting to learn the routine of pulling apart these old radios and what to look for. You know, I'm not no pro by any means. I do this just as a hobby, and I'm not the boss when it comes to restoring what is right, what is wrong, you know. As a fellow YouTuber says, if you're familiar to the restoration videos, you know, take your time, do the best that you can with what you have. And you know, this radio has been sitting for God knows how long, and it predates me by 41 years. So I mean, one more day is not going to hurt. One of the most important things I want to impress that I screwed up on one of my first radio chassis pullouts is to make sure that this tuning capacitor is completely meshed. And what I mean by meshed is that it's completely closed and none of the fins are open. This bit me in the butt on one of my prior projects. I almost had this tuning capacitor cleared the case, the very last fin caught it and laid it flat. I stopped in my tracks. My heart sank. I was like, oh no, now what? I just had to take a pair of pliers and just ever so gently bend it back up flat. Make sure everything was properly spaced back out the way it was. It took some time. You know, I did it. It was my fault, so I can't admit that, you know, I wasn't the one that did it. So I had to fix it, and luckily it came out okay. There was no problems. Now looking at this radio, you see it's very filthy inside. Who knows how long it sat around without having a top on it, and God knows where it sat around at the same time. My thoughts on the top right now as I'm looking at it is I'm thinking about restuffing these two capacitors right here, these two electrolytics. One's a 10 microfarad, one's an 8 microfarad. And they're only a single tap, which means they only have one single electrolytic capacitor stuffed inside of either wax or some kind of a filler inside of those tubes. So that might not be so bad, and it'd save on room under the chassis, which we haven't looked at yet. It might be pretty tight underneath of there. So now, you know, two things could happen here. I could pull this chassis, it could be original, we replace the capacitors and we go on with life, do a little cleaning. Or I could pull this chassis and it could look like the worst, rattiest nightmare you've ever seen. I keep my options open to both because I very rarely ever find one that's been recapped. And you can see that this one's original, not really by the amount of light I have here, but way down underneath here you can see the end of another electrolytic, which makes me wonder sometime maybe somebody did some recap on this. We'll just have to pull it and find out. So let's shut the camera off. I need to switch batteries anyway and see what we got. Now the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to set this cabinet up on end. Everything's secure, so there's no fear of anything falling over. We got 3 screws that allow this chassis to be removed from the case. 1, 2, and 3. First and foremost though, let's see if our knobs will come off. Sometimes you get lucky, sometimes they come off, other times they got set screw. Luckily these do not have a set screw, they just pull off. Let's try the other one. Oh, he's a snug one. There we go. I've seen people have to slip rags behind these and gently ease them off. You've had to soak the shafts in penetrating liquid overnight. We can get rid of that, we don't need that no more. And let them soak. Luckily for us, they pulled right off. They're in good shape. They're not all mangled and nasty, and they look good. They ought to clean up nice. Let's set them over here and move on. Now, I shouldn't say removed, I broke loose these 3 screws prior to standing it up on end, just to make sure they'd come loose with no problems. They're loose right now. I'm going to put the camera down, or I'm going to pause for a minute, I should say, pull the screws, and when I turn the camera back on, we should have the chassis out. Bear with me here. Screws have been removed, and you're going to see this as I see it, folks. I hadn't peeked underneath of this. I just took the screws out and set it back down. Now I'll set the camera down and we'll pull this chassis and see what we got. This is the moment of truth. This is the part where I get excited, you know, because I want to see what this radio's life's been. If it's been untouched, that's impressive. If it hasn't been, you know, it just shows general maintenance and the fact that somebody at least cared enough to revive it throughout its life and keep it around, probably for entertainment. And you know, a radio was a crucial part of a home back in the days, so it kept you tied as a lifeline to the world, whereas today we're cell phones and computers and whatnot. You can get online and look stuff up, where a lot of people had to rely upon a radio to get their information, or a newspaper. But enough about that. Let's see what we got. Well, that's not really too bad. From what I can see, there's probably a 50s or 60s electrolytic that's been replaced in here. It's a Astron. That one's been nipped out of the circuit for whatever reason. Somebody's replaced a resistor there. These must be the original capacitors, because they're all branded the same. They're a I really can't read it, to be honest with you, but it looks pretty good. Oh, that looks nice. Everything's good. It's intact. Nothing bent. Nothing cracked or broke. The speaker looks good. Awesome. That's all I like to see. But it is very filthy. Let's bring this case back up here and take a peek at it. Well, it's not the most impressive thing I've ever seen. Now you can see how bad that bezel's yellowed. It's got a hole right here. Probably something over the years has poked it. The slats aren't busted, they're in good shape. And the case inside is just generally dirty, besides missing a front, or missing a top and a back. Okay. Well, I don't know exactly when I will get to this radio. I'm not wanting to have another open project right now. I had just acquired it yesterday and wanted to share it with everyone. And certain things in the future here coming up kind of predicts how soon I will get back to a lot of this stuff. And like I said, this is just a hobby, and life still goes on, and it's just one of them things that when I get to it, I get to it. So for right now, I'm going to say thanks for watching, and there will be more to come at a later date.